Points. Hello, and welcome once again to the Broad Points podcast. I am your host, the broad that points, the broad with the points. I am Tyler the Lady. It is so wonderful to be here again for another Mindfulness Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for everybody who listened to the first episode and for your likes, your ratings, your reviews, and for subscribing to the channel. By subscribing, you will know as soon as the episodes are posted out into the world for your enjoyment. So definitely don't forget to hit that like or subscribe button. It is honestly just always such a blessing to be able to be creative and to be playful. I have grown up, and my mother will tell you that I grew up with the gift of the gab, meaning I could talk your ear off all day and night long. I was always the one that was doing impersonations of people on TV. I really found enjoyment through making people laugh and through making people smile. And as I became older, I really started to find enjoyment in the process of healing and the process of self-love, which, as I've mentioned before, it is a journey. So, for me to show up and decide that I didn't want to be in pain anymore, that I didn't want to feel so frozen. One thing I'll talk about actually today, let's do it right now, is I physically have gone through, I feel like, a lot of transformations in my life, one of which was from working at a desk job, which sounds like the stupidest thing of all time, that a desk job could be so detrimental to your health and, most importantly, your mobility. Oh my gosh, my mobility, it went from, I grew up an athlete. I always stretched. I always, would go for walks or runs or do plyometrics or whatever you want to work out with today. I was very active. And all of a sudden, I find myself working desk job after desk job after desk job, and for just years in a row, and my hips literally felt like they were frozen. The pain was crazy trying to get back into them. Now, You'll hear my boyfriend, if you know him, he always says crunchy. And that is, I believe it's an FRC. I don't know what that stands for. I would love to tell you, but there are so many acronyms out in this world. Not going there. Crunchy is what we're using, though, for when you're going through emotion with one of your limbs. Everything, it rotates, it bends, and when it feels really stiff, that's what I'm referring to when we're saying crunchy here. And so from working at desk jobs, I felt an immense amount of crunchiness in thy hips. For a while, I was seriously considering changing my name on all of my social media platforms to Tyler the Old Lady, because that was like how I felt. It was hard. And I think I even said it in the last podcast, sometimes it's hard to be with yourself. And for me, as a recovering perfectionist, right, to then go from oh, well, back in my high school days of being an athlete, I was able to do all this stuff. Why can't I do it now? That was really not a fair comparison. And at the end of the day, comparison, it really is the thief of joy. Truly and sincerely, because when we compare ourselves to things that are outside of this moment, this being right now, we're missing so many different variables. We're not giving recognition to our full circumstance, or if it's someone else outside of us, to their full circumstance. There is always so much more going on beneath the surface than we may realize, both for ourselves and for other people. And the word trigger is coming up here. I know it's still a hot word. Everybody's triggered by everything. Everything is triggering. But one thing that coaching actually taught me that I love to highlight to people is that those triggers, those buttons, right, that are being pressed, they're not somebody else's buttons. There are buttons. That means that those buttons, they exist within us. What? Oh my goodness. Where are they? A lot of the times, honestly, we don't even know. We don't know where they are. We don't know who said them originally to implant some of these things into our brains, but they're there. And this week's fundamental phrase is, the greatest freedom is freedom of choice. And in this instance, right, of triggers and buttons, well, guess what? Those buttons exist within you, right? Which means that we have the freedom to choose how we respond. And I say respond intentionally here. I do not say react. The reason why I don't say react here is because when we think of reacting, we don't. We actually don't think of reacting at all. It is exactly that. It is a reaction. It is that button is being pressed and immediately you're opening up your door with a shotgun. Why? We don't need to do that. We absolutely can. It is our freedom of choice. If that is how we want to respond to things, I mean, that is one way. However, we can also recognize here that there are multiple ways to respond, to choose what words, what physical body language we're displaying. It's all a choice. We just have to recognize how aware we are of the situation, of our past situations that have created the triggering button that is now being pressed. People are not out to get you. The world is not out to get you. The world, the universe, it is actually conspiring for you. And when I think of it in that way, right, these people whom we love so dearly, they're always the ones. I love the people that I love with so much passion that sometimes when those buttons get pressed, it is so aggravating initially. Because it's like, why are you doing this to me? But another way to look at it is really the people that love you, they're pressing these buttons. It is ultimately going to help you grow. It is. If you choose to take accountability and to take responsibility and put forth your best self. And that is something that I think for a while, actually, I had to view myself as my best self in order to make decisions. Before we could become one, before we could become fully integrated, we'll say, I had to think of like, who am I when I'm with my best friend? How do I respond when I'm upset by something that my best friend did? And the reason why I had to do that personally, I think, is a lot of years I really viewed myself as a villain. And golly, even just to say it now, it's so funny because I still will like wear a villain perfume. It was my preferred fragrance in high school, and I found it again in my car. And I was like, oh my gosh, this actually smells so good. And it really does just give me a little bit of a reminder of my villain era, we'll call it. But villains aren't created, right? Villains are created. Let's be clear on that. Villains aren't just born. But villains don't just appear out of nowhere and then just go away. All of these different parts of us, they always live within us. And we get to choose what stays and goes. This is actually reminding me of a Bible story, which we'll do sometimes. From time to time, we will talk about different stories and just say, well, what if we looked at it another way? Or how could this be related to in a different light? This story is of Noah's Ark. Or some of you may have seen the movie Bruce Almighty or Evan Almighty or who the heck knows Almighty. Remakes after remakes, I will swear. But Noah's Ark is the story of a man and his wife, and God tells them that the world is going to flood and that they have to take one of each animal, male and female, and take them onto this vessel with them so that they can all survive the flood and then continue on and repopulate the whole world. Now, if we weren't actually thinking that one man acquired all of these animals and built this giant vessel big enough to hold all of them, that's the story of the Bible. If we look at it in a different way, if we flip that story and put it to ourselves, I think that this becomes a very relatable story. Because it is really about the evolution of our being. And for me, when I'm thinking of God in this instance, I am thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my heart. I'm thinking about that controlling factor of me. Me. It's me. And then if I think about that internal voice of mine saying, hey, we need change, big change. We need to get rid of all of the things that are plaguing our world. We need to get rid of all of the parts that are hurting us. And we want to start fresh, but we want to keep all of the good pieces. I think about my evolution through life, and I think about all of the times that I've been forced, to change myself. And when I say forced, I mean, if you don't change, the world is going to change you. And the world has put me through some circumstances where I could have been comfortably stuck. I could have stayed there, but I did choose to leave. And by leaving a situation, you can't just move on to others and think that it's going to be different. One, because that is insanity. But two, if you show up as the same person every single time and refuse to make any changes and you hold on to everything, I mean, me personally, I started to feel congested. I started to feel like this sense of imbalance and uncertainty of not knowing who could or should honestly be controlling the show at that moment. And when I think of how I have evolved over time, it is kind of like I have flooded my entire system. I've taken inventory of all of the pieces of my life, and I've said, how do I want to incorporate the things that I love? How do I want to incorporate the pieces that I feel are making me my best self? And so, in a way, right, I grabbed all of those different personality traits, all those different characteristics, all the different music that I've listened throughout the year, right? And I put those all on my arc. I put those all on the arc, and I said, everything else, you're going to the incinerator. And when I say you're going to the incinerator, that's what I view my heart as. I really do. I view my heart as this light, this burning inferno within me that both guides me and lights my way, but also it is that inferno. It is the sun, right? If we got too close to the sun, boom, poof, that's over. Like we are toaster strudel. But with my heart, it guides me. I move throughout. I know that I'm where I'm supposed to be when I can feel it. When I can really truly feel that I'm in alignment, I can feel my heart. It's beating. It's like, yeah, you're doing it, girl. And so, just like the sun, it has that same power of, well, when I'm done with something, that's where it goes. Because it came from there, and that is where it will return. And then poof, it's gone. But the lessons I've learned from whatever those things are, that's what I keep with me. And so, what is your arc, right? Choose how you respond. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want and look at everything and say, this isn't who I am. This isn't where I want to be. I'm not doing what I'm doing or talking to who I'm talking to. I want to make changes. I want to show up as my best self and allow yourself to integrate all of the best pieces of yourself. If you're willing, of course. Never any pressure. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. It really has been just a journey, honestly, to get here and to be able to share. And I'm so looking forward to sharing more and more every week. Really don't be afraid to ask yourself, what is freedom to you? Because just like success last week, freedom means something different to every single person. So really allow yourself the love and compassion. You are wonderful, amazing. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I will be back again next Mindfulness Monday. Don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe. You can find me at Broad Points on all of my social media platforms. Or at Tyler the Lady. That is my personal page. And if you do still, in fact, use email, I do have an email address for the Broad Points podcast, y'all. It is broadpointspodcast@gmail.com. With that, thank you again for listening. I love you so much. And don't forget, the greatest freedom is the freedom of choice.